I thought it got to be too messy. And I said it out loud. I think for a while, Club Shay Shay was like Wendy Williams with a weight set. Like, hey, this dude, I mean, it just, and essentially, you know, Bernie, you know, felt like he didn't want to do it anymore. He was on his own path, and Steve. So, you know, nothing like that ever happens or doesn't happen for a reason. So I was disappointed, but I understood that, you know, those kind of things happen. And then I watched Bernie Mac and Isaac Hayes in church. If that ain't saying something, I'm like, wow, this is what I've been missing all this time? Y'all can do this? I met Bernie in Detroit at the music hall, and at that time we had 12 o'clock show, 2 o'clock show, 4 o'clock show. First time I ever met Bernie, all he talked about was his family and this city. He loved this city. Initially, I was going to do it, and it kept my schedule. It just didn't work out, but I'm glad.
You ever hear something that makes you stop scrolling and just stare at your screen like, wait, did he really just say that? Yeah, that's exactly what happened when D.L. Hughley dropped this clip. Out of nowhere, after 16 years of near silence, he casually spills a sentence that changes everything. The internet froze. Fans went from, wait, what's he talking about, to, hold up. Is he hinting that Bernie didn't just walk away, he was pushed? And the way DL says it, calm, almost like he's reminiscing, it hits harder. There's something underneath that tone. You can feel it, like he's trying not to say too much, but also can't hold it in anymore. Let's break that down. Bernie felt like he didn't want to do it anymore. Translation? Something behind the scenes went left, something messy. And if you know anything about the Kings of Comedy era, messy is the polite word for it. This wasn't just comedians doing shows. This was politics, power, and pride. Think of it like if the Avengers tour fell apart because Iron Man found out Captain America was getting paid double. Yeah, that kind of tension. And DL's final line? Nothing like that ever happens or doesn't happen for a reason. That's not a statement, that's a warning. That's DL saying, y'all might think Bernie walked away, but there's a reason nobody's talking about. Reddit went nuts. One comment literally said, DL's tone gave me chills. You can tell there's way more to the story. Another fan tweeted, if DL's finally talking about Bernie after all these years, buckle up. We're about to hear some truth bombs. Because let's be real, nobody casually drops something that heavy after a decade and a half of silence, unless there's a reason. But that's not even the wild part. You're not ready for what he said next, or the unseen footage that backs it up.
I went to a funeral the other day. Now, black funerals, I don't care about, and I'm gonna tell you why. I don't care about funerals, period. Because I personally believe that you show your love to a person while they're here. I never watch what somebody else does. It does not matter. Bernie Mac got to do his thing.
What was your ultimate goal? What did you want to do?
To be the best.
To be the best.
Within myself. I'm not in competition with anybody.
So you didn't care what form that took?
No, I don't care what people say.
Not compared to a real job. I will not disrespect the people here that work hard.
This isn't a real job.
This ain't no real job.
I think the luxury comes from us doing what we really enjoy doing, so we don't feel the pain. It's a different type of...
Now listen to that again, real close. DL says, Bernie felt like, you know what, I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm gonna be my own person. At first, it sounds innocent, right? Like a simple creative decision. But here's the thing. People who knew Bernie Mac knew he wasn't the type to walk away just because he was finding himself. This is a man who came from nothing, fought his way up through Chicago's roughest clubs, and built a career off grit and loyalty. When Bernie rode with you, he rode with you. So for him to suddenly say, I'm gonna do my own thing, something must have pushed him there. And DL's tone? You can hear that hesitation, that little pause between words, like he's carefully tiptoeing around landmines. He's not gossiping, he's protecting. It's like when an old friend talks about a breakup they still don't fully understand. They don't want to blame anyone, but deep down, they know something went down that shouldn't have. Because here's what fans forget. Bernie wasn't just funny, he was fearless. The man spoke his truth, even if it made people uncomfortable. So when he felt disrespected or boxed in, he didn't argue, he walked. And now, years later, DL's finally saying it out loud, softly, carefully, but clearly enough that people who were there know what he means. If Bernie Mac really wanted to do his own thing, the question isn't why he left, it's what made him feel like he had to. And trust me, once you hear the next part, that question's gonna hit even harder.
That's taken care of. Then when they sit there and they play psychological blackmail with you, they got the best story, but I'm good at it.
But it's funny because you can say anything. You can say anything about black or black or brown people. You can say anything about them and people will believe you. Anything. Like the same time they're saying Latins eat dogs, Venezuelans took over Aurora. There is a mentality in this nation where you can say anything about them.
It ain't never a good time to fire a black man. There's always gonna be some controversy. In the morning, he got a problem with it. If he come walking in, hey, Bernie, before you punch in, can I talk to you? Yeah, what's the problem? We won't need you anymore.
Okay, so Bernie Mac, people don't know this. Bernie Mac's first movie, Wayans, we put on a lot of people. We put on a lot of people because if you're funny, we want to give you opportunity. You know, the first thing Bernie Mac did, Mo Money, he played a bouncer in Mo Money. Second thing he did, we put him in a movie, Don't Be a Menace. He played Officer Self-Hatred. Wow. Then we put him on Wayans Brothers. Then me and Bernie did Above the Rim together. Like, I love Bernie Mac. Me and Bernie was very tight. You know, I love that man, but I always knew, once again, he was gonna be.
And right there, that's the moment DL stops talking like a friend and starts talking like a fan. You could see it. He was amazing. That's not just respect, that's reverence. DL's eyes even shift a little, like he's replaying old memories in his head. Tour buses, late-night sets, laughter echoing off backstage walls. Because truth be told, everyone around Bernie Mac knew what he was. A once-in-a-generation talent. A man who didn't chase the spotlight followed him. But here's the irony. When people start realizing you're that good, that unstoppable, that magnetic, it doesn't always bring celebration. Sometimes it brings jealousy. It brings quiet meetings, backroom whispers, and phone calls that start with, maybe Bernie's getting a little too big. So when DL says, it was clear the dude was gonna be a superstar, that's not just praise. That's foreshadowing. He's telling you Bernie's rise wasn't an accident. It was destiny. And destiny tends to make people uncomfortable, especially in an industry built on ego and hierarchy. Think about it. Bernie wasn't Hollywood's type. He wasn't polished. He wasn't political. He was raw, loud, funny, and real. The kind of real that doesn't play by the industry's fake rules. And that's what made him dangerous to some people. So while DL's words sound like admiration, they also sound like guilt. Like he's saying, we all saw it coming, and maybe we didn't protect him enough. Because you can't call someone a superstar in hindsight, unless deep down you knew it all along, and watched as the world tried to dim his light anyway. But what comes next in this interview? DL drops something that sounds like a confession, and fans caught every hidden meaning.
I went to a funeral the other day. Now, black funerals, I don't care about, and I'm gonna tell you why. I don't care about funerals, period. Because I personally believe that you show your love to a person while they're here. No, I really do. I'm not bullshit. But I think it's a bunch of bullshit for me to come here and look over a person. I don't know you like that. First of all, you don't know I'm there. So all the things I do for you while you're alive is more important to me than coming, sitting up there, staring at somebody that I don't even know like that. You understand what I'm saying? So I think black people is a bunch of bullshit. White people, man, I respect y'all. Because you all on bullshit. Motherfucker died tonight, y'all bear his ass the next day. He dead. He costing me money. Costing me money. I can't out this son, bitch. He ain't doing no good.
And there it is, the industry card. Whenever a celebrity says, it wasn't tension, it was the industry, you just know there's a whole novel hidden between those lines. DL is basically saying, it wasn't us, it was the system. And he might be right, but let's be real for a second. Hollywood has a PhD in turning brothers into rivals. We've seen it play out too many times. Kevin Hart versus Cat Williams, Tyrese versus The Rock, even Will Smith versus himself. The industry feeds on that drama. It stirs the pot, whispers in ears, and then sits back to watch it burn while counting the ratings. So when DL says, that was never the case, we were brothers, you can almost feel the ache in his voice. Because there's a difference between beef and betrayal. Beef ends when the camera's cut. Betrayal lives in the silence that follows, and fans noticed. One Reddit thread put it perfectly, greater than DL's trying to stay classy, but his tone says he's still low-key mad about how they played Bernie. Less than exactly. Because even if there was love between them, the machine that runs Hollywood doesn't care about love. It cares about headlines. It cares about clicks. It cares about turning family into a plot twist. And when DL said, "The industry does what it does," that wasn't just a throwaway line. That was a quiet accusation, like he's saying, we didn't destroy ourselves. The system did, but if that's true, what really happened behind the scenes? Because the next part of this interview, it's not just emotional. It's messy, revealing, and it changes how you'll look at their entire relationship
Watch what
forever.
somebody else does. It does not matter. Bernie Mac got to do a thing
What was your ultimate goal? What did you want to do?
to be the best
To be the best.
within myself. I'm not in competition with anybody.
So you didn't care what form that took? Did
No,
you-
I don't care what people say. When I went home one day, I told my daughter, I said, baby girl, Bruce was about 8? When I told her, I said, I might say some things, you might hear Dad say some things, but that's not Dad. They're jokes, and it does not matter as long as you know the truth. And when she got big, she started fighting for me. He ain't like that. You know, she used to get mad. You know, they said Bernie's rough, he's raunchy. He just telling Joe he playing.
Okay, pause. This right here sounds like the moment everything shifted. Bernie literally called DL to warn him. That's not drama, that's a cry for backup. When someone like Bernie Mac, a man known for being tough, unshakable, unfiltered, says, "They're trying to pit us against each other," you know it's getting real behind the scenes. That line hits deep because it's not just about two comedians. It's about how Hollywood loves to break bonds that threaten its control. And that phrase, "they're trying to pit us against each other," has become almost prophetic in the entertainment world. Every time two stars rise side by side, someone in a suit starts whispering, "Hey, you know he's getting paid more than you, right?" It's the oldest trick in the book, divide and conquer. DL's response, though, they can't break what's real. That sounds noble, but also naive. Because in Hollywood, what's real gets tested daily. Contracts, agents, media leaks, fake narratives, it's a battlefield disguised as a red carpet. And the way DL pauses before saying, "But after that, things started changing," you can literally feel the silence in the room, the unspoken stories, the moments when calls stopped being returned, when jokes started landing with double meanings, when brotherhood quietly turned into competition. Fans online have dissected this moment endlessly. One TikTok commenter said, "It's always that things started changing slowly, part that gets me. That's how friendships die in Hollywood. Not with a fight, but with distance." Exactly. It's not the shouting match that breaks you, it's the cold shoulder, and it raises the biggest question of all. If Bernie saw the setup coming, did DL do enough to stop it? Or was he too deep inside the same system that was pulling the strings? Because the next thing DL says, it's where fans stopped taking his words at face value. It's where the guilt starts showing. And that's where this story goes from tragic to downright
Bernie
chilling.
Mac confronted Oprah for mocking comedians and saying his job as a comedian isn't a real job.
Have such stressful jobs. How do you unwind to relax at some
I
time?
think their job is stressful. I think being the Wonder Bread representative might be stressful.
Not compared to real job. I will not disrespect the people here that work hard.
This isn't a real job.
This ain't no real job.
I
Look,
work
I think the luxury comes from us doing what we really enjoy doing, so we don't feel the pain. It's a different type of work. But yeah, it's stressful when you got 149 people depending on you, dealing with 10 writers, and you're sitting up there trying to tell your story, going on stage and 18,000 people looking at you, and you ain't funny, man. What you talking about?
You can literally feel the chill in DL's voice when he says this. He pulled back. He was focused. Distant. That's not just a man getting busy. That's a man building walls. And when DL says, "I think he knew something we didn't," everyone watching this interview just went, "Wait, what does that mean?" Because that one line, that's the smoking gun. It hints that Bernie Mac wasn't just distancing himself because of work. He might have sensed the storm that was coming. Let's be real. Every Hollywood veteran knows when the energy shifts. One day, the room's full of laughter and champagne. The next day, it's side eyes and silence. And Bernie, he was no fool. He'd been in the game long enough to smell when the love wasn't love anymore. Fans online ran with this theory. Twitter, or X, whatever Elon's calling it this week, lit up with takes like, Bernie wasn't paranoid, he was aware, the industry was changing, and he felt it first. And DL saying that feels like a confession, like he knew Bernie saw the setup before it happened. Exactly. Because when someone says he knew something we didn't, it usually means he saw the betrayal before it was written. He saw how fame turns friends into strangers. He saw the power games being played in rooms they weren't invited into. And honestly, that's what makes this clip haunting. It's not just nostalgia, it's regret. DL sounds like a man realizing too late that Bernie wasn't pulling back from them. He was pulling back to protect himself. Because when you're that gifted, that raw, that unstoppable, people start plotting your downfall long before you even realize you're at the top. And what DL reveals next, it's where the tone of this whole interview changes. It stops being a tribute and starts sounding like a warning.
Charles, he said, wow, man, they're about to put me out of my house. I'm 8 months behind. I said, you should have called me when you was a day behind.
What Bernie says next, gonna have you nodding and laughing at the same time.
Call me the day that you owe. If you want help, that's not help, that's taken care of. Then when they sit there and they play psychological blackmail with you, they got the best story. But I'm good at it. I see it coming. When they come to the house and all of a sudden they knock on the door. Hey man, what's happening? What's wrong with you? Yeah, it's rough out here. I don't know how I'm gonna go home and tell your sister that we gotta move. Y'all gotta move? Yeah, we can't stay here, can we? Rule number 1, if somebody call you after 9 o'clock, don't let them in. I need to talk to you, talk to them in the morning, 8 o'clock, come to the office. But they ain't nothing but a murder there. They ain't nothing but a murder. But if you say no, you better say no, just like this, well, I ain't got it.
And boom, that's where it gets shady. DL isn't just talking about a missed opportunity, he's describing a Hollywood ghosting. And trust me, that's way more sinister than it sounds. Because when calls start going unanswered, when meetings get postponed indefinitely, when people start acting like they forgot your name overnight, that's not bad luck, that's orchestration. This wasn't some random scheduling mix-up. It sounds like a deliberate move to separate DL and Bernie professionally. Like someone decided, yeah, that duo, too powerful. Break it up. And Hollywood loves doing that. They'll build you up, put you on every billboard, then yank the rug out once you get too close to controlling your own narrative. It's happened to comedians, actors, musicians. The pattern never changes. Fans caught it immediately. TikTok edits were flooded with captions like, they didn't want Bernie to have creative control. And whenever projects disappear, it's usually because somebody upstairs made a call. The way DL describes it, like someone pulled the plug without saying a word. That's the kind of quiet sabotage Hollywood specializes in. No loud arguments, no public fallout, just silence. The kind of silence that ruins careers in the most polite way possible. And what's wild? DL doesn't name names. He doesn't say who pulled the plug, just that it happened suddenly, which makes people wonder, was it an exec, a producer, or maybe someone closer? Because in the entertainment world, betrayal rarely comes from strangers. It usually comes from people sitting right next to you, smiling. And here's where the conspiracy theories started spiraling online. People were connecting dots, digging up old interviews and asking, was this the beginning of Bernie Mac's fallout with the industry? It's eerie, because DL's tone changes here. He stops reminiscing and starts hinting, like he knows more than he's willing to say on camera. And in true Hollywood fashion, the next thing he says takes the whole conversation from suspicious to straight up chilling.
And it kept my schedule, it just didn't work out, but I'm glad I didn't. I thought it got to be too messy. And I said it out loud. I think for a while, Club Shay Shay was like Wendy Williams with a weight set. Like, damn, this dude, I mean, it was messy. The reason that those people went on Club Shay Shay in its first iteration before it became successful, it's because we saw what he did, and the reason I was going to go on it is because we saw what Skip did to him. I said any number of things about the way Skip sunned him.
Is that when he said, put your glasses back on or something
like that? That was so horrible to me that I think a lot of people were determined to help this black man be successful because of what had happened to him. And to kind of curate all that bull and have that place that they worked so hard for you to have so you would have your own space be just an amalgamation and curate all the bull that is happening in our community seemed insulting to me.
Right. And we're talking about, man, some of the same people that rallied around him to make sure.
And this is where the story starts to hurt. DL's tone softens, and you can hear the weight in his voice when he says he kept it quiet. That's Bernie Mac for you. A man who made the world laugh until it cried, while silently fighting battles no one even knew existed. Think about how heavy that is. He didn't want pity, didn't want sympathy, didn't even want headlines, just wanted to work. In today's influencer culture, where people post hospital bracelets for clout and make "get ready with me before surgery" vlogs, Bernie's silence hits different. He was from that old school cloth. Handle your pain privately and make the world smile publicly. But that's the tragedy of it, because when you suffer in silence, the world only finds out when it's too late. Fans online were wrecked by this part of the interview. One tweet said, "Bernie kept his pain private while Hollywood made his name profit. That's the saddest part." And another TikTok comment summed it up even harsher. Greater than "he gave us joy while carrying pain. They gave him fame while taking peace." That's the kind of quote that sticks in your chest, because it paints a picture of a man surrounded by cameras, money, applause, yet completely alone. And what DL says next makes it even more haunting, because when he starts describing those final months, the distance, the silence, the people who suddenly stopped showing up, that's when the real heartbreak begins. It's not just about illness anymore. It's about how quickly the industry forgets you once the lights start to dim. And DL's next line? It's not just sad. It's an unintentional expose, one that made fans furious.
You think I'm gonna let you on Bernie? The reason you was supposed to go last is because it was your tour. It was Steve's tour. These are the guys opening for him. Tell the truth. You thought he was black and ugly, and you were good looking, and he couldn't make it because you did. Now that he gone, you gonna act like...
This line hit like a punch in the chest, and it's the moment DL's calm composure cracks. You know what hurt me most? That's the kind of sentence people say when they're done holding back. DL doesn't name names, but you can feel who he's talking about. All the so-called friends who were loud when Bernie was hot, but silent when he was gone. And that's the part of Hollywood no one wants to talk about. The selective grief. The way people perform sadness on Instagram, but disappear when it actually matters. DL's saying the quiet part out loud. Hollywood doesn't mourn, it moves on. One week, you're the headline. The next, you're replaced by someone with better PR lighting. And fans noticed this hypocrisy instantly. Twitter was full of posts like, greater than, they were all calling Bernie a legend after he died, but where were they when he was sick? And Hollywood doesn't lose people. It replaces them. Oof. That one comment alone sums it all up. It's wild because you can hear the pain in DL's tone. He's not angry. He's disappointed. Disappointed that fame makes people loyal only when the cameras are rolling. Disappointed that the same people who toasted Bernie's success didn't even show up to say goodbye. And what's even darker, DL's wording. Hollywood moves on fast, man. That's not just a statement, it's an indictment. He's talking about an entire culture that feeds on moments, not memories. It's the same cycle every time. Celebrate them when they rise, exploit them when they shine, forget them when they fall. But DL isn't just describing Bernie's story, he's describing Hollywood itself. Because what he says next, that's when it stops being an interview and turns into a full-blown reality check for the entire industry.
Everything we did was legal. And here's where a black woman really gets the kick in the ass. Had I not recorded Tyler Perry, then it would have been my word against his. And then on top of that, it would have been, he's so powerful, we can't even pay no attention to that.
Right.
Well, now I have him on audio, which is legal to do where we live.
Right.
Okay? We have him on audio. And do you know what some people then said? Why would you record him? But did you hear what the man said? I violated you.
Yeah.
I mistreated you.
Yeah.
Do you know, Shannon, that's cost my family tens of millions of dollars?
Yeah.
Over a lie and a rumor?
Is he gonna make he's gonna compensate you for that?
I want you to look in your camera.
Yes.
And I want you to talk to Tyler Perry, because you heard what that man said. So ask him, will he compensate my family for that?
Tyler, will you come on Club Shay Shay and let's have a conversation?
And that, right there, is the line that broke the internet. I just wish people gave him his flowers while he could still smell them. It's poetic, it's painful, and it perfectly captures everything wrong with celebrity culture in one sentence. Because that's what we do, right? We wait until legends are gone to call them legends. We repost their clips, stream their work, flood timelines with RIP captions, but when they were alive, crickets, silence, or worse, criticism disguised as honesty. DL's voice cracks slightly at the end. And you can tell this isn't PR emotion. This is real guilt, not just his, but the industry's collective guilt. Because Bernie Mac wasn't just another funny guy, he was a force, a truth teller in an industry built on lies. And what DL just admitted, whether he meant to or not, is that they didn't protect him. They didn't celebrate him enough. They didn't see him for what he truly was until he was gone. Fans were emotional, but furious. Comments poured in like, greater than, stop giving flowers at funerals, give them when people are breathing. And DL said what everyone in Hollywood is too scared to admit. And honestly, he's right. Because this moment isn't just about Bernie Mac. It's about every artist who gets overlooked, underpaid, or underappreciated until it's too late. It's about a culture that profits off people's pain, and then posts condolences like they didn't help cause it. So yeah, DL said he wouldn't say more. But in those few words, he said everything. He exposed the fake love, the selective loyalty, and the silent regret that haunts the entertainment world. And as fans replay this interview, dissecting every pause, every sigh, every look in his eyes, one question keeps echoing through the comments. Did DL just expose the truth about how Bernie Mac was really treated? Or was this his way of trying to make peace with his own guilt? Bernie Mac's legacy has always carried a kind of unfinished echo. Even now, years after his passing, that echo moves through every conversation about fairness, loyalty, and truth inside Hollywood. D.L. Hughley's voice brought that echo back to life. What he said wasn't just about one man. It was about an entire system that turns laughter into a weapon and then acts surprised when the ones who make us laugh start breaking down from the inside. After those words about giving flowers while they can still be smelled, the room fell quiet. Cameras kept rolling, but nobody spoke. It was the kind of silence that feels heavy, where you can almost hear the guilt in the air. For DL, that silence said everything the industry refuses to say out loud. Because when Bernie was alive, he wasn't treated like a legend. He was treated like a problem that needed to be managed. And now, in death, he's celebrated like a saint, whose pain somehow made him stronger. The truth is, it didn't. It wore him out. Behind the bright lights, every show night was a battle. Bernie fought to keep his soul intact, while the system kept trying to package it into something easier to sell. He wasn't chasing fame anymore. He was fighting for dignity. And that's the part people rarely talk about, the human part. The part where exhaustion isn't just about work hours, it's about constantly having to prove your worth to people who already know you're worth it, they just don't want to admit it. DL had seen that pressure before. He'd felt it himself, the expectation to be funny, humble, grateful, and silent all at once. But after watching what happened to Bernie, he realized silence was the one thing he could no longer afford. So when he finally broke his own, he did it knowing full well the risk. Because every time a black entertainer tells the truth about the system responds with punishment disguised as professionalism. You start getting the quiet treatment, the canceled meetings, the polite emails that say, scheduling conflict. And then, little by little, your name disappears from the conversation. That's how erasure works in this business. It doesn't shout, it whispers. Bernie experienced that whisper long before the illness came. He saw the warning signs, the shifting attitudes, the subtle distance from friends who suddenly had to stay neutral. To the public, it looked like he was still on top, but privately, he was already being pushed to the edges. By the time the tabloids began spinning stories about ego and attitude, the narrative was already written for him. He was the angry one, the difficult one, the one who didn't play along. And yet, when you watch his old interviews, you see none of that. You see warmth, humor, a man who could disarm tension with a smile and still cut through hypocrisy with one line. That's why DL's confession hit so hard, because everyone knew it was true. Bernie Mac didn't get the respect he deserved when it could have changed something. He got it only when it was too late to matter. The industry's reaction after his passing was textbook Hollywood, statements, tributes, glossy montages of laughter. The same people who couldn't meet his eyes in meetings were suddenly crying on red carpets. The same executives who said he was hard to work with were now calling him one of the greats. And DL couldn't sit with that contradiction anymore. He knew Bernie's story had been rewritten. He knew the raw truth was gone, replaced by a safer version that made everyone feel comfortable. That's why his voice trembled when he spoke, because the guilt wasn't just personal, it was collective. It belonged to an entire generation of artists who watched one of their own be torn apart for daring to believe he was worth more. And now, DL stands as a mirror to that history. He's seen what happens when you tell the truth too early, and what happens when you tell it too late. That's why his interviews have started sounding less like comedy and more like sermons. Because somewhere between the punchlines, he's been carrying a message. If you don't speak while you still can, someone else will rewrite your story after you're gone. There's something almost spiritual about how his and Bernie's paths keep crossing even in memory. Two men built from the same cloth, sharp, proud, unfiltered, both punished for being too honest in a business that worships lies. But DL learned the lesson Bernie never got to finish. If the system can't silence you with contracts, it'll try to silence you with guilt. And guilt can be louder than any gag order. So now he keeps talking, on air, on stage, in interviews that blur the line between comedy and confession. Because for him, every sentence is a form of resistance. Every story he tells about Bernie is another chance to remind the world that what they called arrogance was actually integrity, and what they called difficult was really a refusal to be owned. In the years since, that honesty has turned DL into something bigger than a comedian. He's become a historian of pain, documenting what it costs to survive with your principles intact. His voice has carried Bernie's truth further than Hollywood ever wanted it to go, and people are finally listening. Fans who once just laughed are now questioning. Younger comedians are studying what happened, learning to protect themselves before the machine gets a hold of them. That's the quiet revolution Bernie unknowingly started. Not a rebellion with headlines and protests, but one built on awareness, on knowing the price of silence and choosing to speak anyway. Because when DL said they buried Bernie Mac and the truth with him, he wasn't being dramatic. He was naming a pattern that still repeats. You can see it every time a black entertainer's career slows down after they speak up. You can feel it every time someone suddenly disappears from TV with no explanation. And you can hear it every time DL's voice cracks, not from performance, but from memory. The footage, the rumors, the stories, none of them tell the full story by themselves. It's in the pauses, the tone, the way other comedians avoid saying his name too often. That's where the truth hides. And that's why this conversation keeps coming back years later. Because it isn't just about nostalgia for a legend, it's about unfinished business. Bernie Mac wanted to be the best within himself. He said it plainly, "I'm not in competition with anybody." That line feels even heavier now, because the real competition wasn't against other comedians. It was against a system that didn't want him to win. He didn't lose to sickness. He lost to exhaustion, isolation, and the quiet politics that drain even the strongest spirits. DL understands that now more than ever. Every time he's faced backlash for speaking up, every time the phone stopped ringing after he called out hypocrisy, he's been reliving a smaller version of what Bernie went through. And maybe that's why he keeps going. Because telling this story isn't just about honoring his friend, it's about surviving the same storm. In the end, DL's revelation did more than reopen an old wound. It reminded people that behind every celebrity headline is a human being who once just wanted to make people laugh. It forced Hollywood to look in the mirror, even if only for a second, and it made fans reconsider the cost of the entertainment they consume so casually. Bernie Mac gave everything he had to make people smile. The least we can do is remember the truth behind that smile. DL Hughley's words weren't just confession, they were closure. Not the kind that ends a story, but the kind that finally lets the truth breathe after being buried for too long. So as the credits roll on another documentary, another tribute, another viral clip, one thought lingers. Legends don't really die when their names are spoken with honesty. They die when the world lets the lies win. Bernie Mac never stopped fighting for authenticity, and DL Hughley, for all his flaws and regrets, is making sure that fight doesn't end in silence. Because somewhere out there, a young comedian is watching this story unfold, learning that laughter might pay the bills, but truth keeps the soul alive. That's the real inheritance Bernie left behind. Not just the jokes, not just the applause, but the courage to be real in a place that punishes realness. And if that message survives, then maybe, just maybe, he got his flowers after all. And so, as the lights fade and the last echoes of laughter drift into memory, we're left with something deeper than comedy, a truth that cuts through time. Bernie Mac didn't just tell jokes, he told the truth in a world built on pretending. Every line, every pause, every story came from a place place of raw honesty that most people spend their whole lives trying to hide. He didn't chase fame, he chased freedom, the kind that lets you stand tall, even when the world around you wants you small. Hughley's voice, trembling but unbroken, carried that freedom forward. He spoke because someone had to, because silence had already taken too much. And through him, Bernie's story found new life, not as gossip, not as rumor, but as a warning and a reminder that greatness without gratitude from the world can still echo forever if it comes from truth. Years later, their names still mean something. Their laughter still fills rooms. But now, that laughter carries weight, a story behind every smile. The industry may move on, the world may forget, but the ones who know, the ones who felt what Bernie gave, will never stop remembering. Because legends aren't defined by the awards or applause they get while they're here. They're defined by what their truth does after they're gone. And Bernie Mac's truth still moves through every word, every stage, every voice brave enough to speak it. So when you hear his name, don't just think of the punchlines. Think of the courage, the cost, the man who refused to break even when breaking might have been easier. That's who Bernie Mac was. That's who he'll always be. And if you listen closely, really listen, you can still hear it. That same voice, that same laugh, reminding us all, be real, be brave, be you. Because in the end, that's what outlives everything. Bernie Mac, gone too soon, but never forgotten. And thanks to D.L. Hughley's truth, the world finally knows why.